Good afternoon, everyone, if it's afternoon where you are. Hello, my name is Mark Olson. I am a project coordinator at the University of Minnesota Research and Training Center on Community Living. And I'm going to share with you the process and the application for the Moving Mountains Award. First off, I'm going to do a little bit of background. And it starts just talking about the Moving Mountains Award and when it came. As you can see, the next awarding ceremony will be at the Reinventing Quality Conference in Baltimore in August. So if you're applying, kind of pencil those dates in, because in case you're the winner, we would love to have you there so you can present and we can present you with the award. A little bit of history about the Moving Mountains Awards, what I'll start with. It began in 2002 as a collaboration between the Research and Training Center on Community Living here at the University of Minnesota and the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals. We felt that it was really important collectively to make sure that organizations that are creating opportunities for direct support professionals to meet their full potential while remaining in the field be recognized for this work. Everybody knows, and everybody's, I'm sure, dealing with turnover rates that can sometimes be pretty over the top. And our vision is that by training and doing things that are going to enhance the status of the direct support professional, we will get to the point where we can affect those rates to some degree. It was also connected at that time to the biennial Reinventing Quality Conference to offer an opportunity for these best practices to be shared and celebrated with other organizations and others that are also trying to be innovative. ANCOR provided quality review folks for quite a while, and as you can see, their logo's down there with ours and NADSP's now. And a couple of years ago, they joined us as well as a co-sponsor. And so last year, or actually this year, I guess I would say, at the May conference at ANCOR, we did the awards for this particular year. So it used to be that we do all the awards at Reinventing Quality. Now, with ANCOR being on board, we're able to do them annually, which I think is a nice thing. Plus, it gives us an opportunity to bring some of these best practices to just another large group of folks that are really excited about supporting the workforce. Moving Mountains Awards are presented to organizations and agencies that are demonstrating best practices in direct support. We generally put out the application somewhere between Direct Support Professional Recognition Week, which is usually at the beginning of September, and November-ish. And oftentimes it has, now that we're doing this two different conferences, it has to kind of coincide and our process has to fit with each of them. When we're doing it at the ANCOR conference, of course, we have to get that out right away in September, so you all have time to actually spend doing the application. When we're presenting at the Reinventing Quality Conference, we can give you a little bit more time. So this is a good year to be applying. The deadline isn't until February 28th, so you should have plenty of time to really go through and figure out how you can really show off what you're doing to support your workforce. The Moving Mountains Award is about best practices in direct support workforce development leads to better outcomes for DSPs, persons supported, and all stakeholders. It's not necessarily about best practices in support or service provision. Sometimes we've gotten applications of really great programs that people are using that are affecting folks that they support, that we just love, but they aren't really fitting the scope of what this award is about if it isn't about that specific workforce development piece. So I always put that at the beginning of one of these types of sessions so that folks can realize that, okay, if that's what they're thinking this is, that's not it. It's really about that workforce development piece that leads to better quality supports for all involved within the purvey of the direct support profession. The mission is to promote the development of a highly competent human service workforce that supports individuals in achieving their life goals. The scored part of the application, which I'll get into later, is broken into three components, all of which will guide you as an applicant through a series of questions to help you describe Number one, the major components of the initiative that you have going on. Number two, it will help you share about stakeholder involvement, because we as a coalition feel that stakeholder involvement is key to making sure anything that it's done to support the workforce is going to have success. And then the third piece of it that we will talk about is how you act, or have you tell us about, is how you actively are working towards the community imperative. Later in the process here, I will share the actual wording of the community imperative if you don't have it in your brain already, so it kind of helps you understand that a little bit. All of this is being done to enhance the status of direct support professional. These are the underlying goals of the mission. We provide better access for all DSPs to high quality educational experiences and lifelong learning, which enhances competency. Strengthen the working relationship and partnerships among DSPs, self-advocates, and other consumer groups and their families. Promote systems reform that provides incentives for educational experiences, increased compensation, and access to career pathways or career lattices for direct support professionals through promoting promotion of policy initiatives. When we talk about things like pathways and lattices, it's often one of the ways that we feel we can make sure that direct support professionals stay doing direct support and don't move on to something else. I know in my own case, I moved into frontline management and eventually out of doing direct support to supporting the industry further because of some of the lack of the things that we're talking about making happen right now. So yes, I spent many years as a direct support professional, so this is near and dear to my heart. The other thing is to support the development and implementation of a national voluntary credentialing process. We have a number of items out there that are connected to the NADSP site that you can use, or to RTCs or ANCOR, or you can look at competencies and whatnot that are all tied to this. Moving on. Now I'm going to take a quick chance, and I'm not going to do a lot of talking for a little bit. I'm just going to share with you from 2002 on some of the organizations that have been winners in the past of this award. I'm going to have you look at these as we go through, and I want you to just take a peek. And if there's somebody that's a neighbor of yours, or somebody that you know because of connections through ANCOR or NADSP or the RTC or any other organization, they might be a really great person for you to actually connect with and talk about this process, because they'll be able to talk you through some things too and tell you some of the things that they might have struggled with in filling out the form. Again, we will get to that later in the process here, where I will go through that with you. Just keep scrolling through. As you can see, they've come from all over the country, and that's one of the things we love to have happen, getting folks from all over the United States, because each state has its own unique way of providing supports, and each organization does, and there's so much to learn from everyone's experiences. So it's fun when we're able to spread that around. All right, so the application and past winner profiles, if you want to read about any of those organizations and what they did, are at this particular link. I'm going to pull it over here and show it to you again on the NADSP webpage. So if you haven't already gone there, if you don't have the application yet, there's the radio button right here where you can actually download it and look at it. If you don't have it in front of you now, you may want to do that, because as we go through the rest of the presentation today, you may have questions. And as far as questions go, we currently have everybody on mute. So if you want to speak, raise your hand, or even type into the chat box, and we will log those questions, and we will hopefully be able to get to them as we go through the process. The other radio button here is the past winner profiles. You can view those and actually look specifically at what some of the organizations have done. I'm going to click on it and see if it goes. It does. And so you can see this. So this goes in reverse chronological order. So here's St. Coletta, Wisconsin, who won it last year. Penn Mar, Black Hills Works. Ohio Alliance for Direct Support Professionals did a really cool thing with their actual provider agency or provider organization in the state too, which I think is really worth kind of looking at. But you probably got a program if you're on this call where you already are thinking this is something we're doing for workforce that is great. Whatever it is, we want to see it. We love to see what folks have going on. All right. Now, slide here. Okay, moving mountains process. I'll talk a little bit about how we set this up and what it goes through. Application is released and promoted. It's been released. We've promoted it in lots of places. If you're applying, great. If you know others that might be interested, get it in front of them too. The more the merrier. We would love to see what people have got going on. We have a team of representatives from sponsoring organizations. So ANCOR usually organizes a couple of folks, and we get some folks, and NADSP gets some folks. Our team is always made up of folks that are either providing direct support or have provided direct support in the past. It's made up of folks that have done frontline supervision or are doing frontline supervision, and it's made up of organizational leaders as well. So we try and get a good cross-section in our team of reviewers so that we're hitting every aspect of that application and making sure that we're giving everybody the benefit of all of those different types of experiences as we go through the applications. Applications are received and processed for preliminary qualification. I'll go through that when I pull up the application later. What that really means is I, as the person that's facilitating the process on behalf of the coalition, will make sure that you've done all the preliminary pieces. When I look at the preliminary pieces, I always think of them as the kind of things that, like every one of you has probably worked with governmental agencies where they have, you're applying for a grant or something and there's all those little I's to dot and T's to cross. That's what the preliminary piece is, and that's what having that done properly gets you through to the next stage. And so I'll talk a little bit about that before we get into the actual graded application parts of it in a little bit. Applications that meet that criteria are distributed to the review team for review. Usually what happens is you will submit those on the 28th of February this year. I will be collecting them all along. If you're able to submit it early, that's wonderful because it gives me a chance to have time to really get all that processing done a little easier. I usually try and have the applications processed and out to the reviewers within a couple of weeks, and then we try to have our first call within a month of that date so that we can select our finalists. Okay, so when we have that call, we meet usually in a similar situation to what we're doing with the webinar, by a phone or something, because we're from all over the country. We select our finalists. Follow-up calls, meetings, usually through a web system like this, will be set up with representatives of the finalist organizations. Oftentimes what will happen is when your application comes in, we'll be, as we have our call and are talking about the organizations that we feel rose to the top, we will be trying to get things fleshed out even more, because in 5 to 10 pages, which is what we ask the application to be, there may be some things that you aren't able to put down as in-depth as you would like. And if you're a finalist, that's our chance to kind of get a feel for the more in-depth information that you can share about some of the things that are there. The review committee then makes its selections. All applicants are notified. I will notify you if you are a finalist. I will notify you if you are a winner. I will notify you if you did not receive it this year. If you did not receive it this year, it doesn't mean that it probably wasn't a good application. It just means that we had others that we saw a little bit above it at this time. Please apply again. We're always looking to, almost everything that's come in has had some great merit. One of the things that we often run into, though, is someone might put something in where they don't have enough. It's a new enough process or a new enough project, new enough initiative that there isn't enough data to support the impact it's having, and we really love to see impact. So when we get to the application, I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Winners are often asked to attend and receive the award at the plenary session, of the conference that the award is being presented at, and then they're asked to present at a panel breakout at the conference, in this particular case, Reinventing Quality, along with other winners. So, it could be, we oftentimes will we can give one or we can give multiple awards. So it's not like, you're competing to just be the one. We really try and just focus on the fact that we have best practices happening out there, and we want to get them in front of others so that they can see what can be done to really support the workforce. Okay, before I get into this, I'm going to pull up the application form itself, and I'm going to share with you the preliminary piece that I talked about earlier. Okay, here's the application itself. It's the form that you would be able to download if you go to that NADSP website and get that if you haven't gotten it already. This gives a little more background, similar to what I had shared at the very beginning about how we've come to be where we are. Nominations in those pieces here, as I say, again, we'll be doing this at the Reinventing Quality Conference. Okay, application process. Here's the piece where the nuts and bolts things I want to talk about before we get into the graded sections are. I will review this whole, they come to me at my email address, and that's it right there. That's also a good place if you have questions in the interim as you're filling it out. Please contact me. I can certainly give you more guidance. They'll be reviewed internally by me and maybe some others around here to make sure that they meet all the criteria. And that's that there's an official cover letter signed by the Chief Executive Officer or COO, includes the following information. Applicant's leadership has read the application, verification of the program, and the application has been in existence for at least a year, is currently operating at the time of the applications. Applications, organization name, address, email, phone, and names, contact information, the principal contact, those types of things. So we know who to get a hold of if we need some questions clarified, or we you get selected for a finalist. We want to make sure that we're communicating with folks. Identifying the program or initiative by name, the scope of the program, and people have done a single site, full organizations, a regional or a multi-agency thing. The sky's the limit on that. We're looking for just what are the best practices people are using to support their workforce. Applicant organization is authorized to do business in the state or states or counties that are identified and is a provider in good standing in those with licensing and funding entities and accrediting organizations, if those are applicable. So we want to make sure that it's a good organization that's meeting the state guidelines and or other guidelines that they might have to as well. Published deadline, so it has to be here to be by the 28th of February. Provided some of the formats that requested. Robust description. Here's what we talk about. At least 5 pages in the link we expect it'll need to be. We'd expect it, it could go up to 10. If you're going to go over 10, that could be a little bit of a struggle. And we ask people to try and limit it to that. That is at the outside, in part because our reviewers are all volunteer. And depending on the volume of applications we get, it can sometimes be a pretty daunting task to do that. I know I've sat on ANCOR's DSP awards committee a time or two, and wow, the numbers that they get are pretty staggering, and it's wonderful to see. And we love to get that kind of numbers here as well. Yet, keeping the application to a reasonable length helps us with that. If you are a finalist, we'll get into that more in-depth stuff then. Okay. And I already talked about the committee a little bit earlier in the thing. So it says right here, the asterisk I already mentioned, the review committee may offer the award to to one or more of the applicants. During the evaluation process, the content of the applications will be held in confidence. And questions can all come to me. All right, move this away for a second. Okay. Okay, major components of the application. Section 1 is where you're talking about the actual activity itself. If you go through and answer the questions that are listed there, it's probably going to be, you're probably going to have a pretty good application. Broken into 3 sections to help you build your case. The first section is where you describe the program initiative in detail, focuses on the nuts and bolts, basically the why, what, who, how, and how long. The second section asks you to show how your program or initiative ties to the operating principles of the NADSP. If you can answer all 4 of those, outstanding. If not, answer the ones you can, just not in the order, answer the ones that you can. In order to qualify, we look at them all, but there might be one that you're not quite as strong in. Answer it to the best of your ability. It's all a part of showing what you've got, what you can do, what you've done, but also giving us an opportunity to kind of say, okay, here's where strengths are. We really look to be strengths-based with anybody. The second section asks you to show how your program or initiative, I already said that. Third section is where you share evaluative data. Progress of the program so far. We provide the applicant with specific data points that are often collected by an organization. So if you look at that section, I'll pull it back up in a second when we get to the question section, and then I can give you a little bit more in there too. But basically, it asks to show how the program or initiative has impacted those data points. So some of them are things like the turnover, and that retention data is always important. But there's a whole number of other points here too. You may not collect all of them, but share the ones you do. Charts and graphs are helpful in this section, but narrative and anecdotal is also taken into consideration. So if you've got great stories that show the impact, those are great. The actual hard data always is a great thing. There's always that balance that you have to show in anything that you're doing an application for. Okay, and the next section of the application is the evaluation and stakeholder involvement. As with the operating principles and those pieces, you may or may not have all of the stakeholder groups that we list there involved. Share who you do have involved. Share how they're being engaged in the process. Share how you're getting the word out about the work, and that's another part of that section, a subsection of that. It's important to be able to know who all's being involved with the activities that you have going on that are improving your workforce. And the last section is the community imperative. The community imperative reads that the right of all individuals with disabilities to receive person-centered, self-determined supports in the family home, residential, on-the-job support, vocational, or their own homes. It's all about that community location. It's all about being a part of the community and engaged, and making sure that the folks that we're supporting are engaged individuals and engaged in a way that is not just superficial. So it's to me, I look at it as, is the person seen as a valued member of whatever community you're including them in? So how are you addressing the community imperative within your organization? And this, just like all the other sections, people and organizations, based on where you do business, might be in different spaces on this. Just tell us where you're at this point with your work towards a community imperative. Okay, so the question section, we're going to come to this, and this is where if you'd be so kind as to go into the chat section for this, that would be brilliant. And if you have some questions, shoot them at me. I'm going to pull the application up so that we can, I'm going to reduce it in size so I can still see your questions. All right. Play a little bit here. Come on, baby. And we'll talk through the actual application just a tiny bit. So I already did that first section. But now look at the questions that we're having here that they should guide you in section 1. You know, why was the program or initiative developed? Most organizations are going to have a really good way of answering this set of questions. Describe how each of the following NADSP operating principles are addressed. So those operating principles that I mentioned in that early on slide, they're right here for you to see. What have been the program initiative accomplishments to date? So here's where you're getting into that whole looking at turnover rates, retention rates, completion rates if you've got a training piece going on. Those are always important for us to see that people are actually benefiting from whatever training initiative you might be highlighting here. Participant family satisfaction scores are always a big part of this. So I know most organizations do have some sort of way of gathering those types of things. Same with DSP satisfaction scores. A lot of organizations will have something like that in place. Policy development, please specify and describe. So what level of policy change is being made? I'm a person-centered thinking trainer as well, and one of the things that I always talk about with that work is we talk about level changes. Level changes are something you can do individually, and that's the level 1 change. Level 2 is that agency level. Level 3 is those state and federal types of things that you're really having an impact on. So, you know, speaking in ways of those different levels of changes are really, for me, they make sense. It may make sense to you to do it that way, but just at those different levels, what types of policy development might you have going on? Section 2, evaluation and stakeholder. Here's the listing, like I mentioned, of who we want to make sure that you have involved in whatever project is going on. Most obviously, direct support professionals are probably involved at some level, since oftentimes these initiatives are about them. But how are you involving folks that are receiving support? How are you involving a policymaker or two? Provider agencies, if you're a broader organization, if you're an individual organization, are there other colleagues that you involve in your process? Advocates, if there's an advocacy organization in town that really is involved with making sure that things are on the right path here and how things are being impacted by the work you're doing. Family members are always important. Post-secondary educators might be something. We've had applicants that have done things where they've collaborated with a local community college to get credits for direct support professionals that are taking certain courses and getting certain trainings. Those types of things. How are outcomes communicated to stakeholders? So when these outcomes happen, how are you making sure that these stakeholders or other stakeholders are aware of what you have going on? To me, that's always a really exciting piece, because when you're able to communicate it to the community that you're supporting, oftentimes it really helps people understand your innovation and how you're working to really support individuals that you're working with. Community imperative, describe how the program embraces those pieces. And that's pretty much what I had today. Are there any other questions I could answer from folks that are on the line? Please type them in the chat or raise your hand, and John will open up the line so you can talk to me if need be.
Looking silent here, Mark.
Well, you know, John just said silent here. Said, hearing none at the moment. What I will also do is I will put up my email address again. Please jot that down. And if you have further questions, feel free to email me. That's probably the best way and the most likely way that I will respond to you fairly quickly. I usually try and respond to emails within a day or two at the very outside. A lot of that depends on the volume of communication I'm getting on a multiple number of projects that I do here at the RTC. So I will always get back to you. So, you know, and one thing as far as timing goes, the sooner you can get started on this, the better. If you're able to complete the application before the deadline and get it in early, always much appreciated on my end, because then I'm able to get the process in place for our reviewers that much quicker, and we can actually make the app or make the process go that much quicker too. So people know if they got to come to Maryland and receive an award or not. So again, thank you all, and seeing as no one had any specific questions, please feel free to contact me if you have anything else. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Mark.